Hello and welcome my friends to another Saturday morning arcade. I am Savino as always, and today we will take a look at the last game from 1988. Developed by TECMO, Ninja Gaiden is more well known as a pretty hard platforming on the NES, but it started as an interesting beat-em up with mechanics that are still unique to this day. I mean, when I say the series started as a beat-em up, it's just because this game was the first to hit the streets, but in reality, both this game and the NES version were developed at the same time. The game was released in the arcades around November 1988 in the US and Europe and in February 1989 in Japan. It was extremely successful, quickly becoming the highest grossing arcade conversion kit in the US and the second most played cabinet in Japan during its first month of release. Which is not really a surprise considering ninjas were extremely popular around that time. Ninja Gaiden, like the NES game, starts with a duel. Sure, things here are way more flashy than what Nintendo's 8-bit machine could achieve, and for the time it was pretty impressive. This was actually the first beat-em up to have a cinematic introduction. While Dynamite Ducks was the first to have a written story on the intro, it used the in-game sprites to tell the story, while Ninja Gaiden opted for a more stunning style. But this cutscene was just made to flex some muscles because the story here has nothing to do with it. Here, you are a nameless ninja hired by the US government to stop an evil cult led by Blade Damus, a Nostradamus descendant who wants to fulfill his end-of-the-world prophecy. To achieve that, Blade Damus flooded the streets of the US with criminals released from Alcatraz, that's a lot of criminals, kidnapped the president, and acquired the US ICBM codes. Seriously, this is basically the plot of every 80s action movie combined. Talk about rising the stakes, right? And yes, while in other games you had to save your girlfriend or save yourself, in Ninja Gaiden for the first time, cities were in danger. Sure, you won't learn any of that in the game. Here, you just get the duel in the intro and it's right into the game. To learn about the story, you would have to read an article in an obscure Japanese magazine from 1989. When it comes to the graphics, Ninja Gaiden is on par with what we had back in the day. Most sprites are small, aside from some bosses, and they don't show a lot of detail, but they don't look bad, just a bit bland, especially because of the lack of color variety. The backgrounds are mostly great. The first level begins in a suburb of New York, and as you approach downtown, you just see the background buildings transition from small houses to skyscrapers. It's a pretty nice touch. Sure, not all levels are that detailed, with some presenting some boring browns and greens, but overall they are pretty nice for the time. And like most games from this era, there's no parallax scrolling here. Yeah, this would only become a common feature for these games in the 90s, but I won't stop complaining until we get there. Animations aren't bad. I mean, most of your enemies have simpler animations, but the main character is pretty impressive. The moves have weight, the jump looks pretty cool and smooth, and the amount of stuff you can do in this game is way above what you could do in any other beat'em ups. But I will discuss more in depth when talking about the gameplay. Let's first check the OST and sound effects. Your attacks have a lot of weight thanks to the animation, but the sound impacts preceded by your character's grunt feel pretty amazing. Actually, Ninja Gaiden has an impressive sound design, the best so far, I dare to say. Not only your impacts and sword slashes sound pretty good, but you can also hear the impact of your enemies slamming onto the ground, the sound of glass breaking when you throw them on the store's windows, explosion signs being shattered. There's a lot of variety here, and for 1988, they all sound great. The music is fantastic. You start the game with a rock-inspired tune that is on par with the best in the genre and will set the proper mood for the game right away. Each level gets its own music as usual, but each boss will also have its own soundtrack that fits the theme. Like, in the first level, you get some big sumo fighter as a boss, and as soon as you approach him, the music will suddenly change to something more Japanese-inspired before returning to rock in an entirely new composition. Now, there's this song from the second boss that I'm sure wasn't authorized by Black Sabbath, but made it to the game anyways because it's the 80s, who cares about copyrights? When it comes to gameplay, Ninja Gaiden is somewhat similar to other games, but it has some uniqueness to it. Here you have a jump and an attack button, and a third button that works as a grab. But not for grabbing your enemies, instead you'll be grabbing onto ledges and lamp posts to improve your mobility or even attacking some enemies. Your attacks are pretty limited even for a game from 1988. Here you have your basic combo and you can kick your enemies while holding onto something, and that's it. You don't have a special or a desperation move or even a jump attack. Well, you have one, but not in the traditional sense. But yes, there are no flying kicks in this game, which I find pretty interesting. You see, TECMO, instead of copying what other games were doing, decided to change things a bit and gave the character the most unique jump I ever seen in a game. At first it looks a bit useless since you can't attack anyone while in the air, which in the end will just make you vulnerable. But if you pay attention, you will see this jump works more like a dodge than anything else. After pressing jump, your nimble ninja will jump over your enemies and land right behind them, making them an easy prey. But that's not all. As I said, you can attack while in the air, but for that you have to jump over an enemy and press attack in the exact moment you cross over their head. You don't need to be super precise, but the game doesn't offer a very large window for that. You can easily get the gist of it after a couple of tries, and trust me, you will need this move a lot in the game. Not only because it's the perfect move to throw enemies into pit, but sometimes the screen will be crowded by enemies and this is the fastest and safest way to kill them. This move is also pretty important if you want to grab any item in the game. While in Ninja Gaiden you will find a ton of breakable objects, you can only break them if you throw or knock an enemy over them. Your regular attacks don't do damage to these objects. And you want to break them. As I said, it's the only way to find the items the game offers, like pills that give you a varied amount of health, extra points, extra lives, and a sword, which will extend your reach and strength. This is the only weapon you will find in the game and its use is limited, so it's wise to group your enemies in one place before start slashing them. Ninja Gaiden isn't an easy game, not impossibly hard, but it will find ways to kill you more often than not. But the biggest problem here is that this is not a very fair game. You see, Ninja Gaiden gives the player only 2 lives per credit with only 3 life bars. As you may imagine, each hit you take will take 1 bar from you. While this is pretty unfair, the biggest problem appears when you're playing alone. After losing all your lives, the game will bring you back to the last checkpoint you passed. So, if for some reason you had a difficult time fighting some enemies and died right after beating them, chances are you will have to face them all over again. This is especially bad in some specific moments that were designed to get you the first time you play, but aside from that, even being a bit hard, the game is pretty fun. When playing with a friend, you will respawn where you died like any normal game, so I recommend playing this one with a friend or a second controller at hand to avoid any unnecessary frustration. Your enemies have little variation both in attacks and type, but they will come in large numbers, so how diverse they are will be the least of your concerns. The bosses are usually fair, but of course there will be times when you will have to face 2 or 3 bosses at the same time, which can be a bit overwhelming when playing alone, but not impossible. Ninja Gaiden has 6 levels, and while all 6 are traditional beaten up levels, there will be moments where you will have to jump over gaps using your grab button like a ninja, so be ready for some precision platforming from time to time. Curiously, Ninja Gaiden was a game of many firsts. Not only was it the first beaten up to have a proper cinematic intro at the arcades, but it was also the first beaten up to blackmail the player with a gruesome death in case they don't want to continue the game. Yeah, while everyone remembers Final Fight for its iconic continuous screen, this trend started 1 year prior with Ninja Gaiden. And honestly, the dynamite thing is way more humane than assault to the chest. The game was also the first where your character doesn't get knocked down after being thrown by your enemies. It's all automatic, you don't have to press anything to make it work like in more modern games, but it still looks impressive and shows how badass the character is. The game also has a curious feature where your character moves by itself when it's time for the screen to move instead of flashing go at your face all the time. When this happens, you can see your character carefully walking, looking to both sides, weary of enemies to come. You can control your character at any point when this happens, which is good because he can fall into pits while doing it. For a 1988 release, Ninja Gaiden was a pretty good game. Even with some design flaws and some weird difficulty spikes in later levels, I still think this game deserves a lot more praise than it gets nowadays. Yeah, as I said, not everything was perfect, but TECMO was bold enough to try something different from what was starting to become the trend in the genre. Ninja Gaiden had a port to the Atari Lynx that is pretty faithful to the original, and the version for the Mega Drive was in the works, but it was cancelled near completion. Nowadays you can find the game on the Nintendo Switch, the first one. I don't know if the new one has access to the old store. By the way, how's the store working on the new console? They improved the navigation? But back to the game. You can get it on the Switch and PlayStation for $8. And with that, we reach the end of 1988. With only 4 games released in the entire year, it may sound like a small number of games for today's standard, but it was the beginning of what later would be known as the golden age of beat-'em ups. And that's it for the video, folks. I hope you all enjoyed the video, and if you got this far, why not like the video and subscribe to the channel for more beat-'em up things in your life. If this video is the first one in this series you watch, I have many other videos covering the first beat-'em ups ever to be released. Check them out if you haven't yet. I'll be back next weekend with more beat-'em up goods for you, but until then, I hope you all have an awesome week, and remember, keep arcades alive.